Hey, what's up, guys? Peakabout25 here, bringing my series that I'm probably gonna do like every September or something, or after the amusement park season's over. In reflection of 2015, Part 2, Top 15 coasters I've been on. My first in reflection of 2015 was the top 8 amusement parks I've been to. Now it's kind of a setup for what is going to come. This is Part 2, which is the best coasters I've been on. Now, for the third video, I'm probably going to do the flip side and do the worst coasters I've been on of 2015. So, and with all that aside, let's get started. First up, we have Skyrush at number 15 at Hershey Park. And a lot of people would call this their favorite ride at Hershey Park. I'm going to say it's not my favorite. The restraints, thigh crush, it's worth the name there. The trains are awesome, the thigh crushing, though, I love how it pops up, but I also have a negative experience associated with this coaster. I remember the first time I went on it. It was the first coaster, well, second coaster actually. The first one I went on was Comet because I liked starting at the front of the park and working the way towards the back. This was the second coaster I went on at Hershey Park, and then what happened is that I tried to put my hands up thinking it'd be like a B&M hyper, because I'd never been on an intimate hyper before that, and my back ended up bending at a very uncomfortable angle. I have photographic evidence of it. Well, actually, we didn't buy the photo, but I do remember the photo very well. My back was bent out of shape, and I had a crick in my back for a week. But still, this is a great ride, very intense, very forceful, lots of ejector airtime. Just the restraints and the little negative experience that I had on this kind of just ruined it a bit more for me. Still worthy of the top 15. Number 14 is Gatekeeper at Cedar Point. And this is the largest B&M wing coaster out there, and the best one I've been on. It's coming from someone who has not been on Thunderbird. But I love the wing overdrop. I love the keyhole elements going through the front gate. You get the wave of the people entering the park. And it's a great wing coaster. I will agree, it is pretty forceless, unless you're sitting towards the back. I say the same thing about my home wing coaster, X-Flight. And, this is just a great coaster. It's just forceless, and it's not worthy of the top 10. Still a great ride, though. Very good. Next up, we have Fahrenheit at Hershey Park, the only coaster in the U.S. with a Norwegian loop. And this is basically an odd coaster right here. I like to call this coaster the Intamin Eurofighter. I really do. It's some sort of Intamin Eurofighter. That's basically the only term I could put it in. It's not a Blitz. It's not a Hyper. I don't think it's a Megalite. I just call it an Intamin Eurofighter. And this is really fun. There is a bit of headbanging in the corkscrews. Just a bit, but it's manageable. And I love how gentle the Cobra Roll is as well, because some coasters snap right into the Cobra Roll. This one's pretty gentle with the Cobra Roll. It is pretty gentle with it. Norwegian Loop's fun. Cobra Roll's very gentle, very fun. Love the vertical lift hill. It's my first time ever experiencing one. And this Intamin Eurofighter here, and I'm pretty sure I'm driving a couple people crazy with this, but this Intamin Eurofighter here is a very fine coaster, and it's personally the one I went on. This is the one I went on the second most. Granted, the Skyrush before I went on that 2 times in a row, once in the front and once in the back. I went on Fahrenheit on 3 separate occasions on the spread of 2 days, and it's a good ride. Number 12 is Goliath at Six Flags Over Georgia, and some would call this the best at Over Georgia. However, I do have, just like Skyrush, a negative experience associated with it. The drop is not very impressive. It's such a low-angled drop. The best part about it is probably either the first airtime hill or the double helix turnaround or something. That's very fun. And also, if you're sitting in the back, I don't recommend it. It might be a bit more forceful, but it's not worth when you get flung into your stomach, almost puncturing your gut against the lap bars. But still, this is a very good coaster. Probably the second best, no, actually the worst B&M Hyper I've actually been on. It's the worst B&M Hyper I've ever been on, but still, it's a B&M Hyper. You can't rank this very low. You really can't. And that's might aggravate a couple people here. Daredevil Dive over Goliath. Here I sat in all 3 rows. I went on this coaster many times. I really enjoyed it. This was my first Eurofighter. It was a great place to start. And this was a great Eurofighter. Just a dive loop, a sidewinder, or a corkscrew or something. I don't know. It's a great coaster. I loved Daredevil Dive. This was such a good coaster. It was my second time ever going up a vertical lift hill, first being Fahrenheit. This was my brothers and the rest. This was my brothers who did not go with me to Hershey Park. First time going on a vertical lift hill, and he was freaking out. It's pretty entertaining. It's a very short, small, but fun coaster. It's really fun. I really like this coaster. It's just fun. And it doesn't really hurt at all. It's lap bars and they're really good. It's a fun coaster. Now we reach the top 10. Number 10 being Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast at Six Flags St. Louis. And yes, a lot of you might be thinking that the picture on the left is outdated. It is. I mean, I think the tracks are now darker blue in St. Louis, and the tracks in Over Texas are red. But it was good enough. People would get the point of what it looks like. It was probably the best shot I could find as well. This is a Premier Rides launch coasters, and so ever since 2013, I think 2012, they turned the trains around and now it launched backwards. And this is a very short but very enjoyable coaster. Very short, very enjoyable. I really like this coaster a lot. Granted, the lap bars, I mean, it's not exactly the smoothest transitions on a coaster, and especially since you're being launched backwards, it's not exactly the smoothest transitions, and I'm not too much of a fan of going backwards on a coaster. I love going backwards on water slides, but not roller coasters. Not really a big fan of that. And this is a great ride from Premier Rides. It's one of their strongest they've made. There's only 2 across the country like this. This was a winner of Insane Coaster Wars, an episode of that, and it definitely deserves it. It definitely deserves a spot in my top 10, and definitely the best ride at Six Flags St. Louis until they RMC Boss. But I'll get to that in another video. Number 9 is Raptor at Cedar Point. In my opinion, a very underrated or taken for granted B&M invert. This was the best one. This was the best coaster I've ever ridden until they went on a hyper coaster. For 3 years, this was my favorite coaster ever. Because I first went on a hyper coaster in it was my favorite coaster for a long time. Until about this is probably the longest. I don't know. This was basically my first coaster I ever classified as a favorite. It was my first B&N invert, and yes, it's a heck of a place to start as well, considering my home park is Great America. The inversions are great, and the Cobra Roll is not snappy, contrary to popular belief, and this was the coaster that contributed to what I like to call my enlightenment. It's basically, I sat front row, me and my younger brother, only in the front row. We had fast lanes, so because we only had to spend a day to spend there. It's that front row, we were the only ones on there. Rest of the people were in line, like outside of the entrance, waiting for the park to open. We got on it before the park even opened. Front row, so forceful. It was just like, this is going to be a lifelong passion of mine after getting off of it. It was my first coaster of 2015 as well. And it was a lot of firsts. This coaster was groundbreaking personally. And it's still an excellent ride. This is great. Although the color scheme doesn't exactly look the best. I will say that. Number 8, I will say that this coaster could go down a few spots because the last time I went on this was in July of 2014, which is a long time ago for coaster standards. A lot can change. But this ride was great. It's a very bizarre, intimate hypercoaster, but still very fun. It's very fun to pick on as well because there's a lot of oddities in this coaster when it comes to like the double helix, 2 double helixes, a straight section to a large airtime hill. It's a very odd coaster, but still very enjoyable. And this was definitely the best coaster at Six Flags America, definitely. Number 7 is Banshee at Kings Island. This just recently overthrew Raptor. I went on Banshee in mid-August of 2015, this year. Mid-August, so it was less than a month ago that I went on Banshee, and I can still remember how fun that coaster was. It was great. I loved Banshee so much. The B&M vest restraints don't cause for any headbanging whatsoever. maybe just a bit of neck jostling on a bad day, but Banshee, it was my second coaster I went on at Kings Island, the first being the Bat, because there was no fast lane for that. Because again, we only had one day at Kings Island, and my grandfather is very generous with those. And let's just say that, I don't know, Banshee's probably the best B&M invert on there. It gives Montu definitely a run for its money, which, speaking of which, I might go on Montu in 2015, because I do have a planned trip, or 2016, I do have a planned trip to Busch Gardens, Tampa, when we're visiting Tampa Bay area. And this is just a great invert right here. Number 6, this is a controversy alert right here, but this is undisputably the coaster I have been on the most of any coaster whatsoever. This is the coaster I've been on the most. This is the coaster that basically is the coaster of all coasters for me. I am a veteran to this ride. I've trained my hands so much that I can keep my hands up on the lift hill. I know the layout by heart. This is a great coaster. Raging Bull, a lot of people say this is the worst B&M hyper out there, and compared to others like Intimidator, Shambhala, and Diamondback, let's just say this coaster does not look good compared to those. But this is my home turf coaster. This is the one I've been on the most. This is the coaster that raised me from a general public coaster rider to a coaster enthusiast, alongside the help of the enlightenment of Raptor. And I do take this from a very spiritual point of view. This is an absolutely fantastic coaster, despite what everyone else says. And yes, I know you're going to go in the comment section probably hating on me, but this is really this is such a good coaster. It really is. I just can't even describe it in words. Other than this is the coaster I've been on the most. I probably say I've been on this over the course of like 3 or 4 years. I've been on this like 50 to 100 times. I've marathoned this once, and it was just, I enjoyed every minute of the marathon. I went like 2 hours on it. Marathon 2 hours on this. I don't know if that's a marathon, but whatever. It was the longest time I've ever spent on the coaster. It's such an enjoyable ride. Now we get to the top 5. Number 5 is Storm Runner, Hershey Park. And let's just say that there are 3 Intamins in my top 5. Intamin is the best company, in my opinion. The Storm Runner is basically the coaster that got me into launch coasters. In 2014 and early 2015, up until late June of 2015, I absolutely hated launch coasters. I hated Poltergeist at Fiesta, Texas, even though if I go back on it, I would love it now, and probably would reach up into the top 20. I refused to go on Joker's Jinx at Six Flags America, because, well, let's just say, I did not like the launch of Poltergeist 2 months prior to the events of Six Flags America. And I was afraid to death of going on V2. The only way I would go on V2 is bribing. Lunch, money. It's the only way I'll go on V2. But now I willingly go on V2 as part of my routine, thanks to this one. This has got a huge personal bond to me, and it's such an enjoyable ride as well. The launch into, you think it's going to be top hat, then it dives down, you get into a Sidewinder / Immelman combination, then like a double inline twist, and then you just, oh my goodness, it's such a short, but such a fun ride. I absolutely love this one. This is my favorite coaster at Hershey Park, undisputably. Number 4 is Diamondback at Kings Island. And up until, this is, like I said, Banshee overthrew Raptor as the best B&M invert. This overthrew Raging Bull as the best B&M hyper. It's fun in the back row, so good airtime, and it's definitely my favorite at Kings Island as well. This is an absolutely amazing experience, and a must if you go to Kings Island. This is the best coaster in the park. Better than Banshee, better than Beast, better than Firehawk, better than Flight of Fear, better than all of those. And this is such an excellent coaster. I really, really love this one. And from the airtime hills to the twisting section with the turnaround there, and then you get into the splashdown landing, and they were running 3 trains in this thing, so they were booking the operations on this and Banshee. Granted, I don't like that it has seat belts as well as a clamshell lap bar. But hey, it's a newer coaster. They gotta be more safe than it is, and it's also a huge B&M hyper. it gives Shambhala a run for its money, which is definitely a top priority if I ever visit Europe. Alongside Blue Fire Coaster, Expedition G-Force, UK, like Alton Towers and Thorpe Park, the parks as a whole. And number 3, we got Maverick at Cedar Point, an Intamin Blitz coaster. And this is not the tallest, not the fastest coaster, but it is so good. It is just packed such a punch. You just picture you have Millennium Force. It's like the big guy who's like 6 feet tall. Then you have Maverick, who's like your short little, who's just the midget of the group. But he's like that unpredictable guy. He's a midget. He looks very weak, but pow! You know he just packs such a punch. It's such a great coaster. Like lots of ejector airtime. I love the horseshoe roll, the beyond vertical drop, the mid-course launch, such the fast lift hill as well. This was voted best new coaster of 2007, and it definitely deserved the title. And now that they made the lap bars, like I remember I went on in 2013, and the over-the-shoulder restraints are all rubbery. Now they put I-305 restraints on it, and it drastically improved the ride. This ride went from like 7th all the way up to 3rd, just because of the restraint. It was such a good ride. I loved it so much. I loved every moment of this ride, and I wish it was sometimes I wish it wasn't over. Next up, we have Iron Rattler at Fiesta, Texas. This coaster would have been number 1 if I had not gone on it, if I had ridden it in 2015. The last ride I had most recently been on for this coaster was May 2014. And in coaster terms, that's a really long time. A lot can change on a new coaster in such a short amount of time. This is arguably one of the best RMCs out there. Sure, there are going to be better ones coming out this year, especially a Lightning Rod, but this was the first RMC to feature an inversion. This was a great RMC. Granted, they didn't really do too good with the layout. Rattler was a huge twister woody, but then they just took the exoskeleton of the coaster, interacted with quarry wall, threw a 0G roll on there, and dived into the quarry. But I don't care if they didn't utilize the layout to the full potential. It is such a great ride. And is the most butter smooth coaster I've ever been on. Lap bars with seatbelts, and it was just so smooth. The transitions were not jerky. There was no banging. I did not even get thrusted into my partner, my younger brother, while going on this. Yes, he is a travel companion of mine because we live together. But this coaster is just excellent. And I did not want to put this at number 1 just because this would have been number 1. But I really want to go on this again and see how much it's changed. This coaster is so good. And then if you've seen Maverick, Gatekeeper, Raptor on this coaster, I mean, you already know it's going to be number 1. But first, let's get some honorable mentions. I threw the numbers 16, 17, and 18 on this list. Number 16 would be Goliath at Great America. I do have quite a gripe with this coaster. I love the upside-down stall, the ejector airtime's pretty fun, the dive loop is always fun, but it's not exactly worth the wait. Let's just hope the Justice League ride will draw attention away from Goliath, and the lines will be shorter. And number 17 and 18 is Firehawk and Batwing, respectively. The good Vekoma Flying Dutchmans. Some would argue Nighthawk is better than these, but I've never been on Nighthawk, so I'm not going to include it. And the Vekoma Flying Dutchmans outplay Superman Ultimate Flight at both the ones I've ridden, over Georgia and Great America. It outplays both of those. And if I were to go into numbers 19 and 20, number 19 would be the premier ride Spaghetti Bowl rides. If I were to ride Poltergeist in 2015, it'd most likely be number 19, and Flight of Fear would be number 20. And then currently at number 20 is the Batman the Ride clones. My favorite being either Batman the Ride at Great America or Goliath at Fiesta, Texas. So that's my honorable mentions. And now, assuming like you've read my hint very well earlier, number 1 is Millennium Force at Cedar Point. Some people have a huge gripe against this coaster. This is my first Giga, the only Giga I've ever been on, and I really want to get on Fury, which I could ride in 2016, But this is an outstanding coaster. I love Millennium Force. I just love it so much. It is such a ride. I do notice it is a bit ricketier than it was in 2013. It's a bit rickety. Like the floor vibrates underneath your feet, like as it goes along the track. But it's such a fun coaster. Tunnels, overbank turns, the cable lift, the drop, the speed, everything about this coaster is amazing. It is probably the closest thing you can get to perfection with this. It is probably the closest thing you can get to perfection with the coaster. In my opinion, at least. That is until I possibly ride other Gigas like Fury and Fury in I-305, Leviathan, and other Gigas. But this is definitely will be my favorite for a long time. Definitely will. So this has been Peekaboo 25. This has been my top 15 coasters. Share your opinion in the comments below. I respect them. I will not get into a flame war over them as long as you don't get into a flame war over me. I'm not a guy to fight. I'm a thinker. I like to think about both sides of perspectives. And I understand this coaster can be very forceless for an Intamin. Definitely, but it's a 2000 Intamin. Intamin didn't really do launches too much at the time, or maybe they did, I don't know. Intamin didn't really do extreme G-force at the time. What they did is that they built the first Giga, which is basically the huge transitional period, a huge transitional period of coasters everywhere. It introduced the Giga. It did all sorts of things for the coaster community. And this has been Peekaboo 25. This has been my In Reflection 2015 Part 2, top 15 coasters I've ever been on. And, as always, peace.